Welcome to Clued in Mystery. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Brooke, and we both love mystery.
Hi, Brooke.
Good morning, Sarah. Well, it's morning for us, but for our guest today, who's in the UK, it's already the afternoon. Today, we're continuing the conversation that we started last week about magic in mystery with author Tom Mead. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for having me.
Tom Mead is a UK author specializing in locked room mysteries. He's a member of the Crime Writers Association and the International Thriller Writers Organization. He's the author of Death and the Conjuror and the sequel, The Murder Wheel. His stories have appeared in Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine, Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine, and Mystery Weekly, among others. Several of his pieces have also been anthologized, including Heatwave in the Best Mystery Stories of the Year of 2021, which was edited by Lee Child. His debut novel, Death and the Conjuror, was selected as one of the top 10 best mysteries of the year by Publishers Weekly. So it's just a thrill to have you, Tom.
Thank you. Yes, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
So we both have enjoyed your books, Death and the Conjurer and The Murder Wheel, and you specialize in writing these locked room mysteries. Why do you think these were so popular in the Golden Age and actually seem to be making a comeback?
Well, I think the locked room mystery is overall the most challenging, exciting, and all-round interesting subgenre, really, of detective fiction. For those who don't know the genre, it's a kind of a subspecies of the conventional puzzle mystery, the whodunit. But the question here in a locked room mystery is not just who committed a crime, but how physically the crime was committed. There's always the appearance that a criminal has done something physically impossible, whether that is vanished into thin air or crossed a patch of snow without leaving a footprint. The locked room or the impossible crime story has got a lot in common with stage illusion, because there's often a sense of something uncanny or something supernatural at work, whether it's a phantom assailant or something similar. But there's always a rational, earthly explanation. I think the appeal lies in the intellectual challenge. I think that's why the genre was so popular in the 20s and 30s, because it really comes down to a battle of wits between the writer and the reader. It's a kind of it's a game of intellectual cat and mouse. And yes, the Golden Age, which is a term that typically refers to the period between the world wars, when there was a real boom in that particular type of puzzle mystery. I think so the 20s and 30s really saw just a real boom in that particular type of puzzle, where it was about engaging the reader on a surface level, but also on an intellectual level. So it was about presenting an exciting story, but also a puzzle to be solved and a game to be played. So as for the resurgence of the locked room, it's been in the works for a while now, but I think people are being drawn towards more complex puzzle plots again, thanks to certain mainstream hits like Knives Out. Here in the UK, Death in Paradise is a very big show, which makes use of the puzzle plot, but also the seeming impossibility. So it's just great to see all these new writers embracing the all the things that made the Golden Age great.
So, in your stories, Tom, you reveal some of the mechanics behind a few magic tricks. How much time did you spend researching popular illusions from the time period that you write about?
Well, I am fascinated by magic tricks. In other words, mechanics of magic tricks, so the physical gimmicks used by stage magicians. The murder wheel features the seemingly impossible materialization of a corpse on stage during a magic show. So to me, that was a kind of ultimate crossover between my interests in mystery and magic. But I do a lot of reading of non-fiction and historical works about the practice of stage magic and the history of it. And often that will stimulate ideas for the mysteries that I'm writing. The Victorian era was a time when stage magic really came into its own. There were many tricks, many gimmicks, many large scale illusions that were developed during that time that would become commonplace in the 20th century and would become standard theatrical practice. But during the sort of late Victorian era, these kinds of illusions were new and they were still being experimented with. And so I think that is, if you like, the golden age of stage magic, when tricks, when illusions and effects like Pepper's ghost and things like that, things were being devised and experimented in public for the first time. So I love to read about that kind of thing and think about how I could use that in a mystery plot, whether it be as a red herring, something to send the reader in the wrong direction, or whether it's an actual intrinsic part of the mystery itself. But I'm also fascinated by the theory behind stage magic, so how tricks work in a more abstract sense, how they work on the brain, how as audiences we are guided to look in the wrong direction, and the kinds of the gaps in our perception that magicians exploit, which to me are similar to those that mystery writers exploit. In both cases, you're sending an audience in the wrong direction. You're working a trick in front of them, and you're via misdirection, you're making sure they don't spot how the trick works until you're ready to show them. My writing is largely suggested by the general reading that I do about magic and about magic theory, about the practical side, but also the theoretical side.
Is it a no-no to reveal some of those secrets behind those tricks?
For magicians, yes, definitely. But I am fascinated by how tricks are done, and I think that's part of the fun. That's something that's always interested me. But then I'm not a magician. I don't claim to be a magician. So I'm quite happy to give away tricks because I think, it has a natural appeal to human curiosity. You want to know how something is done, but also that's the difference between magic and the locked room mystery. In the locked room, you have to give away the solution at the end. You have to explain how it was done, and the trick it becomes a question of providing satisfaction to the reader, a satisfactory conclusion. If the gimmick is too ordinary, too prosaic and dull, then the reader is inevitably left feeling shortchanged. So I think whereas magicians are forbidden to show how a trick is done, with the mystery writer, it's about you are laying out the solution to the puzzle, but at the same time you're trying to come up with the most colourful, exciting, and an intriguing solution as you can. I mean, I often talk about retrospective inevitability as a feature of a good mystery solution. This idea that your reader will kick themselves because they didn't spot the trick that was hidden in plain sight. And as a reader, that personally, that is one of the great joys of finding a good mystery, is when you see how you've been tricked and you see how the illusion was worked by the writer. And I love that. That's what I'm trying to do with these Spectre books, to give readers that same feeling. So in some respects, it's like a magic trick, a magic show, but because you inevitably have to lift the curtain at the end and reveal how it was all done, that's where the two differ.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I love all the metaphors that you weave into the stories about the similarities of the magic show and mystery fiction. In your latest book, The Murder Wheel, your magician sleuth is Joseph Spector, and he explains that there has been a, quote, trick within a trick. Would you say that that's essentially what's going on in all locked room mysteries?
Yes, 100%. My approach as a writer of locked room mysteries, and the thing that I really appreciate as a reader, is the different levels of illusion and mystification at work. So there can be physical tricks, as in clever gimmicks used to, for example, lock a door from the outside, that kind of thing. But then there are also more abstract tricks, which involve subtle placement of clues in plain sight, um, reinterpretation of a line of dialogue which takes on sudden significance when placed in a fresh context. Also, misdirection and deliberate obfuscation concerning identities and disguise, things like that. And I think the best examples of the genre are the ones where all of those different levels of illusion come into play at once. For me, the writer that really opened my eyes to the scale and the true potential of the locked room mystery is John Dixon Carr. He was one of the greatest authors of the Golden Age. I would place him up there with Agatha Christie, Ellery Queen, all the greats. But he was the acknowledged master of the locked room mystery, not just because he was so prolific in that genre, but because he was so imaginative, so creative. And no two of his books are the same. He didn't recycle or reuse tricks in the way that some Golden Age authors did. And I mentioned clue placement. He was Agatha Christie was a true master of that, but so was Carr, and so was Ellery Queen. The placement of clues, the different variety of clues, and the playfulness of some of them. I think that's all. I think it all kind of feeds into to one entity, and really. In a locked room mystery, you want you want all of that. You want the fun, but you want the atmosphere, the sense of mystique, but at the same time, a kind of tongue-in-cheek humor to it.
That's great. And just building on that kind of idea of the overlap between magic and mystery and fun, having a magician as a sleuth is a great character. So, who are some of your fictional favorites, either contemporary or some from the Golden Age?
Well, when it comes to magician sleuths, I grew up watching the BBC show Jonathan Creek, where the amateur detective is a man who designs illusions for a professional stage conjurer. So that show was great because it had a lot of humor. It was amusing, but at the same time, it featured very complex, fair play puzzle plots in the Golden Age tradition. So all the clues were there, and there was great ingenuity in the plotting. So it was that was a nice kind of entry level locked room mystery experience when I was younger. It was a great way to kind of discover the genre. In terms of contemporary writers and magician sleuths, my friend Gigi Pandian, who writes, she writes several different series, but her Secret Staircase mysteries are particularly good in my opinion because they feature impossible crimes, locked room mysteries, magic tricks, all kinds of fun things. And her detective Tempest Raj is a magician, so I would definitely recommend the Secret Staircase mysteries. But going back to the Golden Age, the archetype of the Golden Age sleuth, this idea of the amateur detective who's roped in by police or the authorities to investigate because they have a particular insight or skill at deduction. I think it lends itself naturally to having a magician or someone who specializes in illusions as a detective. Clayton Rawson wrote a great series featuring a magician as a detective who is known as the Great Merlini. He first appears in Death from a Top Hat, which is a superb locked room mystery, but also fascinating social document, if you like, about stage magic during that period. It's got so many references and little in-jokes and things concerning stage magic and the theatrical life at that time, because Clayton Rawson, as well as a mystery novelist, he was a magician himself, and he was a friend of John Dickson Carr, who I've already mentioned. So yes, the Merlini series is particularly interesting for someone like me, certainly, who loves magic, but who's also fascinated by the clever, complex plotting and the misdirection, etc. But there's another author from that era who he was a professional magician himself, and he only wrote a couple of novels, but they're both really brilliant. His name was Henning Nelms. That was his real name. He wrote under the pseudonym of Hake Talbot, and he wrote two books which are truly fantastic. The first one was called The Hangman's Handyman. That's a good one. But then the second one, The Rim of the Pit, is his absolute masterpiece. It's a perfect cocktail of illusion and atmosphere, where a group of people are stranded in a snowbound cabin, and they find themselves assailed by seemingly supernatural forces. But of course, because it's a fair play locked room mystery, there is a rational explanation for it all, and it unfurls incredibly satisfactorily. So I definitely recommend seeking out Hake Talbot. Like I say, there are only two novels, and the detective is not a magician, but because Henning Nelms himself was a magician and wrote many interesting works about the practice of stage magic, I think it still qualifies.
Those are fantastic recommendations, Tom. And those titles by Tolbert, his titles are fantastic too.
Most definitely, yes. Rim of the Pit gives you a kind of a hint of something otherworldly going on, something supernatural, something demonic. And the stories are really crammed with atmosphere. John Dickson Carr was also superb at creating an atmosphere of kind of creeping dread and eeriness, and the hint that maybe there is something supernatural going on. I think that comes from Edgar Allan Poe, the kind of Gothic tradition, which because Poe ostensibly wrote the first locked room mystery, Murders in the Rue Morgue, and he was a great innovator of detective fiction generally. But his fictional detective, Auguste Dupin, was a huge influence on Conan Doyle's characterization of Sherlock Holmes, which in turn influenced the Golden Age. So I think there's kind of a thread of the Gothic and a sense of atmosphere, a kind of vivid, lurid, occasionally gruesome atmosphere to these stories, which really sets them apart, I think, and that's part of the appeal for me.
And I definitely sense that in your work too, Tom. You have that same atmosphere, the feeling of, questioning what's really going on. Is there something supernatural? You accomplish that really well. I think that we've already answered our final question, so I'm going to go off script just a little bit and just ask you what you're working on next.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I'm actually between books at the moment. I have finished book 3 in my Spectre series. It is called Cabaret Macabre, and it comes out next summer. Again published by Mysterious Press, and I am about to begin work on book 4. So like I say, I'm between the projects, but I'm currently stockpiling ideas for the next one.
That's great. We're looking forward to it.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you'll enjoy it.
And so, Tom, where can our listeners find you?
Oh, yes, I'm on all the social media at Tom Mead Author. So I do Facebook, I find, is a great way to engage with readers directly. But I'm also on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I recently joined Instagram, and I'm also on Blue Sky. If any of your readers, if any of your listeners are on Blue Sky, I'm on there. And my website is tommeadauthor.com.
That's wonderful. Thank you again for joining us, Tom. This has been such a great. I feel like we have like an overview of the history of magic and mystery, and this is going to be so worthwhile, I know, to our listeners.
My pleasure. Thank you both for having me.
And thank you all for listening today on Clued In Mystery. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Sarah, and we both love mystery. Clued In Mystery is produced by Brooke Peterson and Sarah M. Stephen. Music is by Shane Ivers at silvermansound.com. Visit us online at cluedinmystery.com or social media at Clued In Mystery. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or telling your friends.